I was in Brazil. It was in a little town of 1,500 people called Campos Altos in Brazil. Beautiful little small town. Nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Portuguese. I was terrified. And I remember waking up on Sunday morning, and they were playing music. Everybody was going to mass. And I saw people coming from the fields, and I saw how hard they'd worked the day before. And they were getting dressed and getting cleaned up for church. And I thought, these are hardworking folks. I can identify with them. And I'll spend the rest of my career in coffee to ensure that my brand grows, and I purchase more coffee around this globe to keep their families fed and this farm going. And that was my commitment to coffee I made to the farmer, and then, of course, to my family and to the brand.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. We're recording from the Propel Productions podcast studio here in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Matt Saurage, chairman of Community Coffee. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here today.
Look, it's a great honor to have you in the studio. You're fourth generation owner of this 100-year-old family-owned company. In fact, the largest family-owned retail brand coffee company in the U.S.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Right? From Louisiana.
Yeah, right here.
Louisiana.
And an institution in our great state, but with a presence that continues to grow across the U.S. So truly, thank you for being here. It's an honor. But look, Matt, why don't we start by talking about some of Community Coffee's numbers to give people an idea of the size of your operations today.
Yeah, well, sure. We're the family, as a family business, when we say we're the largest family-owned coffee company in America, you would think we're extraordinarily large or extraordinarily rare. Yeah. I'll tell you, we're extraordinarily rare today. We're one of the few family businesses that roast their own brand of coffee and still are successful competing on the marketplace that we're in. The stage is enormous. It's an international market today. But Community Coffee out of Baton Rouge has 2 manufacturing plants. We roast coffee here in Baton Rouge, also in New Orleans. But we distribute that coffee to about 27 states today.
Oh, wow.
26, 27 states. Our footprint used to be just the Southeast, but now we're in Missouri. We're coming into Illinois. We're in the Carolinas. We're out in Oklahoma. So it's really a growing footprint, growing very slowly, consciously, and across all channels. So, when you take a picture of Community Coffee, what you'll find is a single brand, Community Coffee. That's all we do, right, is roast and sell community coffee products. We are in grocery stores. We're in big box retailers, offices, industry, hotels. Anywhere you can drink coffee is our marketplace. So we're also one of the few coffee brands that's truly across all channels. Even in e-commerce, it seems like everybody starts in e-commerce. And we began in mail order back in 1980. So wow. We've been through mail order and then the internet in the 90s and now e-commerce properly. So it's a very interesting, complex business centered around a single brand focus, which is how we really achieve the success and the longevity that we have today.
Number of employees.
About 800 employees work for Community Coffee. Most of those are in sales, warehousing, and delivery. We're one of the few coffee companies that is direct store delivery, meaning that we our trucks, our salespeople deliver and sell products to the door of the grocer or the office or the restaurant. That's kind of hard to find today. And on that truck, we just carry coffee, cups, tea, and creamer, perhaps, but not the broad variety of vending products that a lot of others you'll find at a lot of other retailers today.
So that's really fascinating. I'm thinking, as you mentioned mail order, I'm thinking that there's, people from Louisiana that grew up on your coffee that maybe move, to another state, but they have to have their community coffee to start their day. So,
well, one of the things that we often get accused of is having an inflated market share. Is that there's no way in Louisiana that they drink this much coffee. Well, we all know that in Louisiana you do drink coffee in the summer, in the winter, on the beach, when you're fishing. You drink coffee all the time. It's part of who we are, part of our culture of food and family. However, a tremendous amount of coffee is exported from the state in the trunks of a car, on an airline. We ship coffee all around the world to our military service people who serve all around the world. Mm-hmm. I've gotten notes from, believe it or not, the North Pole, not from Santa Claus himself, but from the North Pole, letters from Alaska, Antarctica, and most meaningful, the ones that came from overseas, from our military and also from those in the petroleum industry who moved far, far away from home. And they order our products or have families ship them gift boxes with community coffees, one of the items there, helping them kind of connect to home, just be a little closer to home. So it's an overinflated story sometimes of how much coffee we drink, but it's not overinflated by how much we love our coffee, and we love our products that are unique to us here in Louisiana to help those far away connect.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So look, I wanted to talk about recent events, Hurricane Ida, and how that impacted community coffee.
All a company is people. It's just a group of people working together. And so it affected our people a lot. Storms and hurricanes, they can come and go. Each one's different. Each one's unique. And Ida was very, very unique. It really struck in the heart of our marketplace here in Louisiana, much like Hurricane Laura did last year in Lake Charles. It affected a lot of our employees. But there's this beautiful thing that happens in the face of a challenge like Ida. People respond. They act with autonomy. They act out of just goodwill. We're the type of brand and company that believes that you protect your family first and then your neighbors. We'll take care of the business later. We can always take care of the business later. We had employees that came from out of state that came to Louisiana to work, run routes, load trucks, roast coffee, so that the employees who were directly impacted could take care of their family, take care of their homes. In a community, we have certain things we give towards philanthropy, you could call it. One's education. That's probably the most recognized that we do. The other, support for our military, service individuals in peace or wartime theater, doesn't matter. Those who are far from home, we'd like to send them coffee. Yeah. The third is sustainability, particularly in the supply chain and on the coffee farms, and the impact that we have on the environment. But the fourth is one that we've developed muscles and memory and skill, and that's disaster recovery. Wow. It's not one that we love, but it's one that we're really good at. And across our marketplace, whether it's tornadoes in Alabama or it's hurricanes in Florida or it's other catastrophes, if it's in our marketplace, Community Coffee will be there. And we're there to serve our first responders. We're there to support people like the Red Cross that provide shelter. And we're there because it's part of our DNA to want to reach out and be part of that community. We believe that we're the coffee company with heart, and our responsibility is to support those that are really supporting their own communities. And unfortunately, a lot of times that happens and you see the best light during a disaster like Hurricane Ida. Yeah. But we were very lucky. Business-wise, since we are a grocery as well as an office and restaurant and serve all channels company, we could respond to Ida. If you're displaced from home or you're displaced from your office, then you'll purchase coffee in the grocery store. If a grocery store is down, then we can supply coffee to convenience stores and depots and other places where people will be buying their groceries or food pantries. So it's a challenge. I won't say that it's not a challenge, but it's a people challenge. And I think that relationships between leadership and their people, you can survive these things and you can thrive. during times like this, as difficult as they are.
So obviously it's a massive disruption to everyone in their personal lives and businesses. But as I was thinking, of your distribution, network and your customers, and how are you, I mean, does it turn like into a command center type situation at the office?
It really does. In a hurricane, you lose communications. So this first 24, 48 hours when the cell phone towers are down, the power's down, people are kind of running on their own. And they know we prepare. We definitely have a plan before the storm approaches of what to secure, what the expectations are. And the first expectation is to take care of your family. And the second is to get in touch with us. Let us know how we can help. And so that command center, the very early hours is very quiet. We're like everybody else. We're staring at TV, hoping to get some news and what's going on. And then the calls start to come in, and that's when our team gets involved. That's when our coffee trolleys get powered up and sent out into the field to where the need is the greatest, or where the first responders are maybe tending to first. That's when we start to get a list of who needs what. We were very blessed. We didn't have any loss of life in this hurricane. But we had a lot of people who had needs. And as I related earlier, sometimes the need is, I can't come to work for a couple of days, but my customers need help. They need to restock their shelves. They need help clean out their kitchen in a restaurant. A small family restaurant just needs a lending hand. And that's where our families come into play. Community coffee is a family business, but it's many families' business. There's a lot of us involved in this company and a lot of communities. In those times, the command center is mainly for communication, coordination, and connecting people together and getting busy. It's a lot of hard work.
Man, that's fantastic. It's so I was curious about, so this is the latest disaster, right on the heels of, the prior 18 months of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. And in short, what impact did the pandemic have on your business?
On the business, it was quite challenging. And as a small company, there was impact on our supply chain. There was concerns about our supply chain. There was a lot of concerns about the health and well-being of our employees. When you look at the sale of our product and how we go to market, we're a very fortunate company. We're one of the few companies that serve all channels. So what we found are people were out of work. Restaurants were closed, but our grocery volume increased significantly to offset that. People need their coffee. Right. Coffee is an item you just can't live without. Yeah. And so we were able to balance our income and our turnover, our revenue, and do well during COVID. Yeah. Not as good as we would like, but certainly much better than some industries were. Right. We had restaurants at the lowest point were down about 55% in same store sales, same account sales
of your accounts. Yeah,
of our accounts. Convenience stores 30%. Even though you thought everybody was still going to convenience store, well, they weren't. They weren't going to work. They weren't going to school. They weren't purchasing fuel. So that's a dramatic shift that can really put a company in peril. But luckily, we had grocery, and we have a very strong e-commerce engine at the company, and some great partners there, some across the United States. So we were able to balance things and keep people focused, really.
Yeah, very cool. So look, why don't we back up and let's start talking about some family history. And from the very beginning, started by your great-grandfather?
Mm-hmm. Cap Saurage.
Cap Saurage. So tell us the story of how he got into the coffee business.
Same way most people get in the coffee business. They just fall in love with the people in the business. Here in Louisiana, New Orleans was the number one port for coffee in the United States for its first 100 years in the United States. And it eventually was surpassed by New York. But before then, New Orleans was the center of trade, all trade. So sugar, spices, flour, coffee was one of those commodities. My great-grandfather was in the grocery business. He had a small store at the gates of what now is Exxon, where they're building Standard Oil. So he would purchase his raw goods, his commodities in New Orleans, and met the coffee people and loved them. And he came to an agreement with his brother Frank that they would divide the business. Frank would take the grocery store, and my great-grandfather would blend and bag coffee out of his garage in Baton Rouge and start a coffee company.
So was he roasting at that point?
He was not roasting.
Okay.
No, back then he was driving. Imagine this: no interstate, driving from Baton Rouge to New Orleans to pick up all these goods including roasted coffee, would drive it back to Baton Rouge, and then would blend it, create his own custom blend and compete against other coffee companies that were in Baton Rouge. We did have 4 roasters in Baton Rouge during that time, 3 or 4 that he competed against, but he loved it. He loved the people, and he believed he could do it better. And his customers, his community supported him, his neighbors and friends, which is how he got the name Community Coffee.
So the community was from the very beginning, the name.
Yes.
From the very beginning. And it was, the meaning behind it was him.
My grandfather was a poor man, came from a very large family from White Castle. He moved up to Baton Rouge for new opportunity, and opening the store was risky. Striking out on his own without his brother and opening a coffee company was more risky. So he really appreciated the support he had from his neighbors, and he named it after them. Said, "This is our community's coffee." He was just a small business in a small neighborhood trying to feed his family.
That's fantastic. So how big was, how old would he have been when he started? Do you know that?
Yeah, he would have been right about 30.
Okay,
30
so
years
fairly
old.
young. Yeah. And how big was he able to grow the business?
Pretty large. My grandfather, for the first decade or so of the company, was just packaging coffee in his garage, literally, on 17th Street, downtown Baton Rouge, and was working alone and raising his children. His son, my grandfather, H.N., came to work for him. And H.N. dropped out of school early, didn't complete all the schooling he wanted to work with his dad. And at that point, the business was an ongoing concern. There was enough velocity that, the children could enter the business safely. Had his brother-in-law join the business, had other family join the business. And my grandfather's the one who really brought in roasting, importing a green coffee, modern packaging, built a manufacturing facility. So during my great-grandfather's lifetime, he got to see Community Coffee become a brand, an entity with an office and a manufacturing facility with branches located in Lake Charles and Houma and Lafayette, Baton Rouge. So he got to see the company really become legitimate and real, and also experience that transition from a struggling family business trying to feed the children to one that he believed he had really planted a seed, a cornerstone, to something that perhaps his grandchildren would enjoy. Yeah. And he did get to see the beginning of that as well.
So when you think about the 4 family leaders of the generation, your great-grandfather, grandfather, your father, and yourself, in a long career in Community Coffee, accomplished, obviously many, many things. But is there one major accomplishment that each generation is kind of known for, at least in your eyes?
Yeah, I believe my great-grandfather just had the courage to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
I mean, I think the founding member there is just, it was really, that was his mark. He had a dream, he had a vision. He was a good man, and he had character. My grandfather built the business. He built distribution systems. I mean, he really modernized the business and believed that it could grow and it could compete using technology, roasting. And he was demanding about freshness. He wanted control over all aspects of freshness and quality of the product. My father we call him the steward of the brand. During his career, he built the brand, the way we think about brands today: brand management, its character, its identity, its promise, its advertising. During his tenure, he competed against the tremendous great brands on TV, television advertising. Those companies out from outer state, but were doing advertising in Louisiana. He was the brand man, if I had to give him a hat. He's the one who insisted that we will not package other people's coffee. We will not do private labeling. We will do one thing. We'll make Community Coffee great. And if we fail at that, then we fail at that. But we're going to give it our best. I don't know what my impression will be long term, but of those 3 gentlemen, the builder, the brander, I believe in people. I believe you put the best person in the position to do the job. One thing in a few moments I have right now to tell you is, Community Coffee's not always had a Saurage at the helm. Yep. And since 1990, we've had non-family members run the company. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a firm belief that we want the best person to run that company. Yeah. And we want every employee to know that they too may not have my name, but they could be the CEO of the company. We've had tremendous success and growth from those individuals. And I'd like to believe that as I grow not only the footprint and identity of community and its reach, I continue to grow a great workforce and great leadership.
Yeah, I was curious if e-commerce is maybe something that grew under your leadership. I mean, I know you mentioned the mail order, but looking at your website and the amount of products you have out there, and it's just really exciting to consider, how much you could ship out there in the way of variety, and that's pretty fascinating. So is that a fair estimate?
I don't know if my children would say that I'm not hip enough to claim to dominate e-commerce, but I will tell you what I believe I have done. I've embraced ideas. I've embraced the coffee house. I've embraced specialty coffee. I've embraced the fact that some people drink coffee out of a bottle and it's cold. I've embraced that sometimes coffee to people has milk and sugar and it tastes like caramel and it doesn't taste much like coffee. And I believe that also that giving individuals opportunity to fail and opportunity to succeed and let them truly believe they are the business owners, they'll be very successful. And I think that's helped us grow that business. The other aspect that I really am bringing to the company in this stage of my life is an understanding of our responsibility to the supply chain. I started in coffee on a coffee farm. That was my really in-depth introduction to coffee where I fell in love with it. And
where was that?
I was in Brazil. It was in a little town of 1,500 people called Campos Altos in Brazil. Beautiful little small town. Nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Portuguese. I was terrified. And I remember waking up on Sunday morning and they were playing music. Everybody was going to mass. And I saw people coming from the fields and I saw how hard they'd worked the day before. And they were getting dressed and getting cleaned up for church. And I thought, these are hardworking folks. I can identify with them. And I'll spend the rest of my career in coffee to ensure that my brand grows and I purchase more coffee around this globe to keep their families fed and this farm going. And that was my commitment to coffee I made to the farmer and then, of course, to my family and to the brand.
It must have been terribly exciting to know that your business in buying that product from overseas was, having that impact on providing jobs and for these families and these farmers. And I can imagine you in that situation saying exactly what you just told us.
Well, at age 26, I thought I could change the world. And at the age I am now, I realize I can change the world just a little bit. Yeah. And if a little bit is all I do and I advocate what my feelings are, what I believe is right and wrong, and if others support me in that, we can all make great change. Yeah. So I like to believe that little bit by little bit, somebody out there has been influenced and benefited from that cup of coffee that we're drinking here in Louisiana today.
Yeah. Very cool. Matt, let's get in a word from our sponsor, and we will be right back. One of our sponsors, MBD Maintenance, is excited to announce that after 25 years, they're rebranding their company name to Pivotal. It's the same ownership, same staff, same location. Just a new name that better represents the services that they provide their clients across the Southeast United States. Pivotal does commercial building construction and renovation. They do tenant improvement work in retail and office facilities. They do installation of dock doors in distribution centers, storm and fire damage repair, and catastrophe recovery for national disasters. The team at Pivotal is simply the best. They're experienced, they crush schedules, and they have an impeccable safety record. If Pivotal can help you with your next project, you can find them online at pivotalperforms.com. And we are back with Matt Saurage, chairman of Community Coffee. Matt, I kind of wanted to go now into the whole process, and I thought it would make sense to start with the supply chain. And I think the root of that is the farmer, right? And you just mentioned about how you fell in love with that at the age of 26. And so explain to us how that works. Are there, relationships that you have directly with farmers that you're buying from? or is it, farmer, exporter, importer, roaster? Is it a blend of that? Give us an idea of how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question. Coffee is farmed all around the world, right. And there's many different qualities of coffee and many different sources and countries. You probably rattle off to, Colombia, Brazil, Kenya, Africa, in general, Ethiopia. Yeah, there's a lot of coffee out there. So the key is the relationship first. So it would be easy for me to say that I have a direct relationship with every one of our suppliers, but I don't. I have a direct relationship with most of our suppliers, and most of our suppliers we buy from, we visit, because you can learn a lot when you walk onto a coffee farm about how they treat the plant, the soil, their employees, and those relationships exist in most of our supply chain. But there is a balance. Some of these farmers are so small. 5 hectares, which is maybe 3 acres of land.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very, very small. And so they rely on joining a cooperative,
right?
And bringing their coffee to market with the cooperative that provides them with maybe credit, maybe cash, maybe fertilizer, technification, or training on how to grow the crop. So some of them truly I'll never meet. And then some of the larger ones I do know. And then in some of our specialty coffees, obviously, we may be the only purchaser of that coffee in the United States, or we may have an exclusive relationship with them. We have relationships like in Rwanda, when after the genocide in the 90s, Rwanda lost much of its male population, but also lost all of its coffee heritage and know-how. Wow. And USAID, some coffee companies, including ours, supported an effort to bring coffee back to Rwanda, because it is really the world's foremost specialty coffee. It was probably the first specialty coffee came from Rwanda.
Really?
But it was all the surviving women and children, and they got their farming community back. They learned how to grow coffee, quality coffee, and they had a guaranteed buyer. One of those buyers was community. We were the first coffee company to bring Rwandan coffee and sell it in the marketplace in the United States following the genocide. That was 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Those relationships you can't abandon. They're good relationships, and it's all centered around the quality of the coffee. And we do those things selectively. We've done this in Colombia. We've done it at different levels in Mexico, and then Brazil. We have relationships go back there. Well, since that first container of coffee that my grandfather brought in came from Brazil, and we work with the family continuously. So some of them are direct relationships, but in a world of coffee where we may buy coffee from 11 different countries, maybe more during a year. It depends on the crop, because it varies so much year to year that you have to move from Honduras to Peru, or maybe Panama. You just have to keep moving to find the right flavor of coffee to highlight our blend. We want our flavor to be consistently year to year. And so maintaining those relationships is difficult, you would think. There's 25 million coffee farmers. There's thousands of coffee brands. But coffee's a very small industry. And for a long time, it was a handshake. And your name and your word meant a lot, and it still does. So if we talk about, technology or electronic payments or this internet of things, in coffee and other cocoa, tea would be a great example. It always to do with your reputation and keeping your word and being very clear about what your expectations are. And if you don't have the relationships, to seek those relationships. And I believe that it's made a difference in our company, because there's times where there was a frost, or there was a strike at a port, or right now, there's so many supply chain challenges because of the pandemic. Your coffee shipment can be late. It can be abandoned. We don't get abandoned shipments of community coffee. Our coffee's delivered, because for the last 100 years, we've been a good buyer. We seek those relationships. We recognize quality. And that's a key role for me and others in the company, is to continue these relationships and to continue to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about fair trade agreements and what that looks like for community coffee today versus pre-fair trade.
Well, fair trade is a broader definition of direct trade that I'd probably use. And direct trade is, I'm a believer that I would rather pay a farmer a premium for quality coffee than to pay a third party for a label. And it's not a criticism of fair trade. But what it is fair trade recognizes that there is a floor for a price of a pound of coffee that can support a farmer. I recognize that some of these farms are so small, the price of the coffee is insignificant. It's too small to be a coffee farm, and they have to have coffee, and maybe they'll have pineapple, maybe they'll grow cabbage on the farm as well to have an ongoing concern. So my expectation is that we have direct relationships, so we understand what the true value of that coffee is to that farmer and reward them for their work. So if they produce a quality coffee, they get paid more. And if it fits our taste profile and it's consistent and reliable, they get paid more. And we do that directly. I think there is a role for fair trade. I think there's a role for a lot of these labels that try to not regulate, but ensure there's compliance, in the industry. But if I have the opportunity to bypass those nickels or dimes or quarters and go straight to the farmer and say, I will give this to you for a relationship with me, I think that adds greater value. But I'll tell you what has happened. Over the 90s and the 2000s, people experienced better coffee, became more aware, the globe got smaller.
Yep.
In Audubon Society or Fair Trade or these others brought awareness of the needs of the farmer. That's really helped. It's helped a lot. There's a role for that in our industry. And the consumer now asks questions like the one you asked, which is, well, what do you pay that farmer? Are you sure do you know who you're buying a product from? Is it safe? Is the farmer thriving as much as we're thriving? Yeah. Those are really good questions. And those are the questions that lead to the future of the industry. And where I spend a lot of my time now is ensuring those questions are getting answers.
Yeah. So when you think of sustainability, is the consumer driving that?
No, the farmer's driving that. So if we may call it sustainability, what they at the farm level call it sustainable farm. Think of crop rotation. People generally are familiar with that. A farmer is the first to tell you, I will take that waste product and I'll reuse it as fertilizer. Or I'll take that waste product, trimmings from the bush, and I'll use it to fire my furnace that I need for production. They'll be the first to tell you that if I pollute the water, then my neighbors downstream will not be able to fish. So sustainability at the farm level is part of the practice of running a smart farm. And it's not to say that there's not abusers. Certainly, that exists. And it's not to say they couldn't do more. But when the consumer asks for sustainability, the benefit is it brings not only awareness, but it brings cash and credit to the farm. So now the farmer's going from reusing waste and treating wastewater to installing solar panels, to bring technology to train not only the farmer, but the trucker, the people in the city who maybe dump wastewater from the municipalities, to help educate them on what the farmer sees as a needed element of sustainability for that society. If somebody asks me, is Community Coffee a sustainable company? What do we think about sustainability at the farm level? I define sustainability in multiple ways. You have economic sustainability, which is very important. You have environmental sustainability. You have cultural sustainability. And cultural sustainability is closely tied to stability or sustainability of a family farm. When farms fail, cities fail. When cities fail, the environment fails. It's abused. These things are all tied together. So it's not just about using organic fertilizer. It has to do with fair price, providing education, providing a marketplace for that coffee, providing information so they can improve the processes, as well as stability.
Man, it's fascinating. Love that. Talking about pricing, the price of coffee has spiked over the last 18 months to 2 years, but more specifically, you had mentioned before the show, over the last few months. Can you talk about that, the magnitude of that increase, and then how that impacts your business and maybe your strategy moving forward?
Yeah, so the price of coffee has been pretty low. There's been periods in the last 5 years where it's been too low. And there is a too low of a price that is really not fair to the farmer.
Right.
And for commercial coffees, it can really decrease production and yield and decrease everything I just spoke about, sustainability and reinvestment and all of that. It's been floating north and getting higher, and then suddenly it leaped. So it's over 50% increase in the past probably almost 3 months. That's a dramatic increase in our input costs. That, along with everything else that is increasing in cost due to the pandemic and supply chain issues. So why is coffee increasing so rapidly? Why do we not see it? There's plenty of coffee in the world, and consumption is very, very healthy. If anything, it's kind of flat due to the pandemic, but it's been growing. So it's not a supply and demand issue; it's a currency issue, and it's a regulations issue. So that being said, it's coffee is traded by people who don't roast coffee. It's you could go out and buy a futures investment in coffee today if you wanted to, and so we do have these wild fluctuations I never experienced in my first decade in coffee, where coffee will dramatically go up in price for no apparent reason other than speculation and investors. But we have to deal with that. That's our primary cost besides labor is coffee. How we're dealing with it, good thing is we have long-term relationships, so we do fair negotiation of how are we going to survive the good times and the bad times. So with some of our suppliers, we pay them a premium when the coffee price is too low, because we know it's not right to pay them below their cost of production. And when prices go high, we ask them to be patient with us and to help us get a good price as it's fluctuating up and down. Some of this is going to have to result in the marketplace. There are pressures everywhere in the supply chain today, and it's incredible. And sitting here, I can tell you that I don't know when these interruptions will end. The forecast is very cloudy, I would say. Yeah. But as a company, what we do is we take a long-term view at it. We are not a public company, so this quarter's results aren't nearly as important as 5 years from now results. And so we're patient. We try to do our role in cost management. Buying smartly, as I said, we have positioned ourselves as well as we can. But eventually, we're going to have to reflect that in prices. But I'll tell you what I won't do, and this is a commitment that we make as a company. We're not going to provide lesser service, obviously, and we're not going to sacrifice quality for cost. We are not going to cheapen the product. That's not fair. It's not right. Yeah. It's a very short-term view. So to have the quality ingredients we put in the product, if our price has to go up, we'll ask people to just bear with us and rely on us for a good, consistent cup of coffee each and every day. And as the prices ease back, we'll be fair with them, but we're not going to cheapen the quality then either and take cash from the table. We're in it for the long game. I'm here for the next generation.
Yeah, it's really fascinating when you think about that. Your flexibility as a private company to make the decisions for the long term, and maybe it busts a quarter or two, but that long term it's going to be the right thing to do. And in a public company, you really have to deliver quarter after quarter after quarter, and I mean that's why people like Michael Dell take a company back private.
Exactly.
So they can make the right long-term decisions. Okay, so the process, and I know I'm going to butcher this up, but here's what I'm thinking. You got to harvest, you harvest your product, and then they're drying it. I think I've seen pictures of farmers drying it, and then I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff happens, but they ship it, and then it gets to you guys. You guys roast it, process it, grind it, package it. I mean, is that roughly the process?
There's so many steps in the process. Coffee is touched by so many hands, and every step of the way, once a coffee is harvested from the coffee tree, once it is dried and stable, that's about as good as the quality is going to get. There's a whole process there that I just skipped over of the pulping and the drying and the fermentation and the different wash methods and et cetera. But once it gets to a dry coffee bean where it's stable and it's in a sack, it's about as good as it's going to get. Yeah. And all you can do then is really mess it up. So in the transportation and the handling, the way it travels across the ocean, if it comes in contact with a strong odor, or if it gets wet, or if it gets somehow in contact with other ingredients, you can really foul it up. You can foul it up when you roast it. You can foul it up when you blend it. You could have just chosen the wrong coffee from the beginning and not know what you're doing. So there's many ways. Our role is to make sure that we find a coffee on the farm that matches our taste profile, and we work with reliable people, intermediaries, to get it on a container, get it to the dock, get it to us. We'll take care of it when we're here, and then respect that coffee. You can't make great coffee out of mediocre coffee beans. So when you get the green coffee, and that's that is what you have to work with, and you cannot improve it beyond what it's capable of. So roasting it is a very, very, it's more of an art than a science to make sure that you're extracting the full flavor, what that one ingredient is supposed to have.
So is every one of your coffees blended? I mean, are there any coffees in which it just comes from one bean?
Yeah, there are some what we call single origin coffees. Okay. So last year and in the marketplace we had Guatemala, and it was just a straight Guatemala, or a Brazil. These single origin coffees, a lot of craft roasters will offer those, and they typically are from one farm or one variety, and you can experience what does a coffee from Honduras grown at a certain altitude taste like. And imagine grapes. So you can be in Napa Valley. If you go throughout the valley, all the grapes taste different. And if you year to year go to the same winery, the wines will actually taste different, or the grapes taste different in the vineyard. Coffee is much like that. So we're constantly moving around, finding the taste profile, and then carefully protecting it so that one ingredient in the recipe will be okay in a blend. And most of our coffees are blends. Most people who drink coffee enjoy blends because they aren't used to the strong flavor of a Kenya coffee. Yeah. Colombia and Brazil are probably the most widely known straight coffees that people say, well, I kind of like that. I'm used to that. I expected that. Some of these flavors are very wild. It tastes like blueberries. It tastes like honey, or it tastes like chocolate. And so it's creating a recipe that you can have consistent flavor over time. And that's a key step. Yeah. But at the end of the day, community coffee's responsibility is to protect the green ingredient, make sure the recipe delivers consistency in the cup, get it roasted well, packaged fresh, and delivered.
So I think of a winery you mentioned, or a distillery, or a brewery that have a brewmaster or whatever. And in the coffee business, you have a master roaster, right?
We have a master roaster. And on the green coffee side, we have a coffee buyer who's Q certified. And that's a certification you have to earn. It's a sensory certification for tasting and smelling an amazing variety of tests involved. We have over half a dozen of those in our company today. So some of them that are not coffee buyers, some are in production, some are in sales. Those who are educated, have educated palate and maintain that palate so that they, just like I, and just like you as a customer, can sense changes in our product and bring attention to it, and also be there to help us find new products and create new flavors.
How much time is there between roasting and grinding? Does that happen quickly?
Relatively quickly. After roasting, the coffee has to rest. It has to, what they call degasp. It releases a lot of gas from that thermal process. And so within 24 hours and 18 hours, it'll be in a bag.
I see. I was curious about like your roasting operations, how many machines you have, how many roasters you have.
But I started my career in the plant and roasting as an engineer. Formerly, I practiced school as an engineer. We had the best roasters. So we have a bank of 6 roasters that are from the 1940s.
No way.
Think of an old car. The chassis is a 1940 roaster. My grandfather roasted with them. Other coffee companies that we purchased them from, they've been continuous operation. There was a lot of our specialty coffees, as well as some of the mainstream Cafe Special, for instance. Yeah. It's roasted on these small 500-pound batch roasters, and they've been running for 80 years. We also have modern technology. So we have roasters that roast at 6,000 pounds an hour versus the 500 that I just spoke about. We have a number of roasters that roast at 3,000 pounds an hour. So at any time, there's probably 10,000 pounds an hour of coffee being roasted at community coffee.
Fantastic.
And in New Orleans, we have some other roasters that are from, I believe, the 50s. They're a little newer roasters. I haven't got to run them myself. But roasters don't die. The technology hasn't changed too much. Yeah. There's improvement in controls. Definitely is improvement in volume that can be roasted. But the development of that coffee bean and development of its flavor, it's like baking bread. I mean, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. Yeah. And so that part of the art of it is unchanged. It's just the car that you're driving.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Love that. Okay, Matt, we'll get another word from our sponsor, and we'll pick it up on the other side. We would like to thank GearTrain for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. GearTrain is a national program management company that specializes in the inspection and audit of conveyor systems, VRCs, robotics, and material handling equipment. GearTrain also manages routine maintenance and repair programs, as well as emergency callouts for clients all across the United States. GearTrain technicians have the experience to keep your automated equipment systems running at peak output. For all of your inspection, audit, and maintenance needs, reach out to GearTrain. They can be found online at geartrainperforms.com. And we are back with Matt Saurage, Chairman of Community Coffee. Matt, we've talked about your customers that every day wake up and drink community coffee, and they're in love with the coffee, they're in love with the brand. And I have a good friend of mine, John Begay, falls into that category. And Hurricane Ida, he was very fortunate, had very minimal damage. His power was out like so many hundreds of thousands of others. He had a gas stove, and he had a stovetop coffee maker, and he had community coffee, whole bean coffee, and an electric grinder.
Yeah, see the challenge.
Yeah, and as grateful as he was for his situation, he was beginning to get a little panicky that the power was going to remain off, and what was he going to do? He had to get his community coffee fix, and fortunately his power got back on. But he forever modified his hurricane shopping supply list to include ground coffee, community coffee. So I loved him sharing that story with me.
That's when you go visit your neighbor.
So let's talk about, we talked about the roasting. Let's talk now about the tasting part. Tell us about cupping.
Yeah, cupping is the same practice all around the world, and it's a standard way in which we sample or taste a coffee to identify nuances in it that give it its character or define what it is. So it's a tasting, and it's a very methodical practice with a certain weight of coffee at a certain grind and a certain temperature of water that steeps for a certain amount of time, and then it's cupped or tasted by a cupper. We just call them cuppers.
Yeah.
And so at our company, our cupper is a Q certified coffee grader and cupper professional. He will cup in his team. They will cup all day, twice a day, maybe 20 samples a day of coffees. And and what they're looking for, they have tremendous palate memory. So they will cup a coffee. It's probably the most interesting part of the story is they'll cup it when they choose it from a farm. So it's offered for sale. They'll cup a coffee, take notes. They'll cup it before it's loaded onto the ship for export. They'll cup it when it arrives in New Orleans. That's 3 times now, to make sure nothing changed between the farm and the ship or in transport for a couple of weeks on that ship, and make sure it didn't get stored near diesel fuel or something that would corrupt it, or make sure we have the right coffee in that sack.
Right.
And then they'll cup it a final time before it's roasted. So their palate memory will span months with this one coffee, this one contract, that it needs to be at the certain specification of what's desired from that origin all the way through the process. So the cupper's job is not easy. And what is interesting is at a cupping table, there'll be 5 cups of coffee, and what they're looking for is, it's pretty easy to tell when there's a defect. If it's bad, it's bad.
Right.
If it's changed a little bit, you need to go check your notes and see if something changed. But those 5 cups may represent a container of coffee, just 40,000 pounds of coffee that they're tracking and tasting 5 brewed cups to approve to be manufactured. That's a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Sometimes those samples represent 3 containers on one purchase order. Well, now we're 100,000 pounds of coffee. So it's not a stressful job. You would think it'd be very, very stressful. Big decisions being made at that cupping table. But it's methodical, standardized. And what they evaluate is the body of the coffee. Does it have the fullness or the weight on the palate, like skim milk and whole milk, that this coffee should have from this origin as a characteristic? Acidity, which is brightness. Is it bright with flavor? Is it lively as it should be, like a Colombian would be or a Kenyan would be, but a Brazil would not be? Then they'll evaluate the flavor. So I'm picking up the flavor notes that should be present. Rwanda coffee oftentimes will taste like blueberries. Am I getting a blueberry? Am I getting a a graham cracker flavor from it or honey. And that's that skill of being a certified grader that's so difficult is to articulate in words what you're tasting. It's because it's hard to tell difference between, a pear and an apple when you're blindly cupping coffee. And then, of course, like aftertaste. And flavor and aftertaste are the two things that you and I can relate to.
Right.
Does it taste good now? And do I have a good memory of it? And then there's some other characteristics they'll grade in the coffee to make sure it's correct. But so the cupping is very important, big decisions, but each cupper's looking for something different. That's why community coffee tastes different than another brand of coffee. Anybody could take our recipe and say, well, I'll take 1 part Brazil and 1 part of X and 1 part of Y and blend it together, roasted that color. It's going to taste just like community coffee. It won't. It can't.
Yeah.
Because that Brazilian that we selected is specific. It's a certain flavor profile that we've learned, we've repeated, and these certified cuppers memorize with their palates. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that is absolutely fascinating. So as a Saurage, as an owner, you had to learn that process.
I did. I learned it. I learned what coffee tastes like from a very young age. I grew up on it, right? And then learning the cupping was a humbling experience because it was a totally different experience. I learned with my father. I learned with our coffee buyers since I've started my career there.
Yeah.
And then as there should always be a Saurage at the cupping table. I mean, I am not the green coffee buyer. I don't have that skill, that palate skill. But each week, my mother, my brother, and myself, we all live in Baton Rouge, we cup coffee with our buyer each and every week. And it allows us to talk about the coffees. What is he sensing or she sensing? What are their concerns? What does the market look like? What do the photos look like at the farm? Are we making any changes? It allows us to tend to that, to have a voice in it. And we're doing we have our own palate memory, what we expect at the cupping table. So there will always be a Saurage somewhere in the business. That's why it's family owned and successful, is that somebody's in the business taking care of it. And there's always going to be a Saurage at the cupping table.
Yeah.
Because that's where the quality starts.
Love that. I mentioned your website earlier in the podcast, and when you look at it, there's so many products. And I mean, you have, flavors like ground strawberries and chocolate, or ground vanilla waffle cone coffee. These are and so just curious, is there how does all that happen? Is there a product development team that has come up with these ideas and then actually taking it to a final product?
Yeah, we have a fabulous team here in Baton Rouge. The resources, I mean, the people that work in this town that we work with, either as panelists or help us with flavors or design, are incredible. And in our company, we have a graphic design team that designs most of our packaging, most of our advertising. Print advertising will come through them, unless it's something just extraordinarily new and we're looking for bold ideas from outside the company. But they do most of the work there. It's a very stable team. And then new product development is the future. Coffee's changing, so these flavors are one thing. But ready to drink coffee, iced coffee, cold brew coffee, coffee that comes in little capsules that you brew with a machine. You get 1 cup at a time. I mean, these are the innovative ideas that are the future consumers' desires and wants. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you fail along the way. But if you don't try and you don't try to innovate, then you're never going to discover it. So we have these people at our office here at Community Coffee, and we work with our suppliers. We seek information from far outside Louisiana. We look to Europe for a lot of ideas. There's a lot of tremendous things going on there. But innovation, creativity, R&D, graphic design, we do that here ourselves. We do use agencies, obviously, where we need them. Yeah. But we really value our talent. And for them, it's very rewarding. It's not a job. They are committed to, if it's vanilla waffle cone, somebody owns that. Yep. And they really love it. They believe in it. They're going to champion it. And it's a great opportunity to have personal and professional success.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, if you haven't, check out Community Coffee's website and just scroll down the page of their products, their e-commerce site where you can order. Just a brilliant display of, incredible branding and marketing and packaging. And it's just fantastic to see. So let's talk about that e-commerce site. And what has been the community coffee experience in e-commerce over the last few years, and today versus 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and how is that trajectory for you?
Wow, it's incredible in two ways. The last 18 months is I don't know if it's an anomaly or it's just a shift. It may be a channel shift. We had tremendous growth in e-commerce as people shifted their patterns from either buying the grocery store or maybe our brand existed in their office. They never bought it before, but they were seeking that coffee. And we were way over 60%. I don't remember the exact numbers. I just remember how quickly it went up and how long it's been sustained.
Yeah.
Certainly over the last 5 years, the main growth has been through other sellers of our product, the Amazons, the Walmarts of the world, that are online resellers for our product. But our club business, those customers who come to Community Coffee to send gifts to others, has equally been growing. So it's fueled by social media. We do all of our social media, in-house relationships. I mean, come on, it's coffee. It's a very personal item. Yeah. It's built across the table from someone that you're having a discussion with, or you just met, or you're in a new stage of your life, going to school or traveling. That's how brands are exchanged. That's how brands grow. And we see a lot of that reflected in the social media and through our website, where they want to read blogs. They want to hear the story of Community Coffee. They want to hear the story of the people and what we're doing. It's a relationship. And that is where we've seen a mail order business that was maybe 1%, 2%, 3% of the business now become its own channel in the business, where it's 20% of the business. It's growing, and it needs new ideas, new leadership. It's youthful, but hey, look, my mom and my father-in-law and all my family, they all use the internet, and they're all seeking the same thing, which is a relationship with the brand and an interface like our e-commerce website to buy a product and share it.
And it seems like, maybe those who weren't accustomed to e-commerce, the pandemic put them there. And then they realize, hey, okay, I can do this. This is easy and actually quite convenient. And you saw Amazon's revenues increase 25% or more in that first quarter post-pandemic or post the start of the pandemic. And so it's really interesting that it may forever be changed, with that segment of the population that has got on board that.
I think so, but again, I think it's more than that. People have access to information, and they can really determine for themselves the depth that they want to know a brand. They can also sense when something's not right. So I guess I'm looking for authenticity. Yeah. When you give them the tool like the internet and time, which people had during COVID, they had more time. They really evaluated some of their brand choices, and I think we saw more of that because unlike the recession, unlike Katrina, when our company grew tremendously after Katrina because people moved out of the state, they were displaced to other cities where we didn't have distribution. We were a small company. The coffee followed them, and our brand has always grown by following the consumer and consumer demand. This was different. This is where people who did not move, they did not leave, right. They were isolated, and our brand was growing over large geography. So I think some of it is word of mouth, some of it is people evaluating their choices. Other is storytelling. They heard a story. Yeah. They met somebody and finally decided to follow up on that person who had a Community Coffee story and see what it's all about. And that is definitely reflected in our e-commerce and our traffic.
Yeah, look, we all know multiple people who would not drink anything else. I mean, we all have those friends, right? So look, Matt, as we start to wrap up, I wanted to ask you what you thought the greatest challenge that faces Community Coffee in this evolving coffee market.
I think the greatest challenge is to remain connected to those consumers in such a way that, we have great people, we have great customers, and most of our ideas or innovations or successes are linked to the impact on that customer. Came from our customers, and we don't want to lose that as we grow, as we continue to grow this footprint. We're going to be a national brand. We're going to do it our way. which means we'll probably be doing it on the back of those red community coffee trucks and with employees who work for a brand that they believe in. But we don't want to be a big company that gets too far away from our essence, our culture. So growth while feeling small but growing, retaining culture in the company so that it's as authentic and real as it is today, that it's that way 20 years from now, is the biggest opportunity. I call it a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's a tremendous opportunity to differentiate yourself from competition. The consumer behavior shifts are tremendous. Mentioned ready-to-drink coffee or cold coffee, or somebody's talking about a coffee that doesn't even grow on a tree. It's created in a lab or something now. We have to adapt to that. So we have to be adaptive, have to be listening to consumers, stay in touch, be innovative, be creative, but do what we think is right for our brand and be good brand stewards of that. And the last is, practice what's worked in the past. We have a value system we believe in. We have a decision tree we believe in. A decision tree is pretty easy. What's the impact on our business? What's the impact on our people? And if we can answer those two questions, we'll probably make the right decision as we try to serve the consumer's needs. So I think those are the biggest challenges. I do not believe that there's anything that will challenge coffee, the beverage, more than what is challenged in the past. Perceptions, was it good for you or not? Which clearly the World Health Organization has said it is not linked to cancer. It is good for you. It has great health benefits. But the second is going to be climate change. So it's not really about community coffee now, but in order for the fifth generation, which is entering the business now of our family, and the sixth generation to have a community coffee company, they're going to have coffee to roast. And so we have to deal with climate change. We have to help farmers have profitable incomes and sustain their culture, economic feasibility, and continue to grow great tasting coffee that allows community coffee to be differentiated from all other coffees in the marketplace. That's a real challenge. And that one will last well beyond my time at community coffee.
Yeah, it strikes me when you first mentioned, again, your 26-year-old self in Brazil, and you knew at that moment that you were going to help these farmers, and that you did and could, in fact, have a role in changing their lives. What I think is at play there is the same thing that your great-grandfather, Cap, experienced as he started his business, that sense of community. And to that extent, you're working on the global community, and everything you're saying seems to honor the intent of how this business was started, and to look at how your family has been able to hold on to that plan and that initial vision, and I think in part at the root of that is to grow at a controlled pace so that you do not ever lose your culture. It's just a fascinating thing to witness, because it's not how business is normally done nowadays. It's how do you scale, how do you get to market first, and all the things that in many cases are wrong in the process. And the fact that your family, 4 generations and with the fifth one, engaged in the business now, it's just fantastic. And the fact that you're a Louisiana company and the legacy that you have, it is just the most wonderful thing. It's a fantastic business story.
Louisiana Loyal, Louisiana Proud.
Yeah.
And those are the challenges ahead of us. I always sum it up in a few words. And the first is do what's right. Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
And you'll be rewarded for that. And we try to do right in what we do and be patient. We're not conservative. We're very aggressive in the marketplace, but we're conservative and patient and understanding that this is a long-term decision we're making. My job is that this sustains for generations to come. And so we will respond to consumer demand for a product. We will be there, but we're not going to outrun our or the tips of our skis, as they say. The second is that I believe coffee is community. I really do. This world that I've enjoyed, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's a coffee fanatic, but coffee is community. It's where people visit. It links people together. It connects cultures. It is a global industry. We are blessed in Louisiana that through New Orleans, we are part of this global coffee chain.
When you look at your branding, every package seems to say family-owned community coffee. What's the importance of that? And what role does your broader family, we've talked about the 4 generations, clearly it's more family involved in that. What's the significance of that, and what role do you have as a family as a bigger picture?
Ultimately, you're going to hold me and my family accountable for what we say and do. Mm-hmm. So if we say that your satisfaction is guaranteed, or if we say that this product is good, or if we say we're going to be there and set up your account on Monday morning at 8 a.m., you've got the family standing behind that representative. It's a family promise. So when I see family owned or family operated, I always think that somebody's paying attention. And if I pick up the phone, I could probably speak to them. And you can call me and you can speak to me. It rings right outside my desk. So I think that is an obligation that we want to communicate because it's intentional. And the other is, it's not just my family. It's all of our families at Community Coffee. And the culture we have there is we all believe in community coffee. And we all believe that our children could work here, or we aspire to. And we have many multi-generational employees because that's where we spend the majority of our time in our life, and that's the people we like to be with, and we want to continue that and pass it on in the future.
You've talked about the role that your family, your immediate family, your wife and your children play in some of the decisions, not all of them, but that's a big resource for you.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't answer the second part of your question earlier, which is, it's not just me. All the family connected to this company, the spouses, my niece, nephews, everybody should be knowledgeable about Community Coffee and appreciate their role in it. We're shareholder stewards. We're just carrying it down the field a little farther, but we all are involved. And some decisions in the business world are really, really tough. And in my role as chairman, a CEO or a board member or others will come up and ask me a really, really hard question, or give me a really strong, firm suggestion of what they believe is right. And what's important is that they know I'm standing behind them. And I will make that hard decision, or I'll embrace the decision that they've made. And if I need somebody to help me in that decision, I always got my family to turn to, who's knowledgeable of the business. The support of my wife, family drives me every day to be a better person in my job. And in that way, I can support those leaders in the organization and their families because I get it. They're connected to this company. Their identity is connected to this company just as much as mine is with the name on the bag.
Yeah. Matt, it has been a complete pleasure. Fascinated with your business, as I mentioned, and what a treat it was to talk to you. So thank you for coming in.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
How fantastic was that? Man, I just love talking with Matt and learning about all aspects of the coffee business. I think one of my favorite parts of this podcast was very near the beginning when I asked Matt about Community Coffee's response to the hurricane. The recent Hurricane Ida was a massive storm and impacted so many businesses. And I just love how Matt was eloquent in his explanation of where the priority was. And he made it very clear it wasn't just in this instance, but in many other instances in all the markets that they serve, the Community Coffee is going to be there. And it really struck me that that's a very sophisticated response. And that's not something that a small business owner can say, obviously. But it comes from a 100-year-old family-owned company that created that culture of community. And it's in their DNA. And so, they really identify when their community is hurting and when they're needed. And, just to hear him explain that, really got me thinking that, man, this is a fantastic company. What a great way to start the conversation. But so much that he said throughout the rest of the podcast and so much that we learned from him. This one's a gem, and I just really am grateful for Matt coming and sharing his stories. We appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.